Hello everyone, again with our channel, and our completely free safety courses. Our free safety course topic is OSHA Noise Safety Part Number 4. This is a complete online course with exam and certificate from our website directly after you pass the exam. You have unlimited times to pass the exam. Before we start, you are kindly request from you to prepare yourself well and prepare a separate sheet to take some notes, and use to answer the knowledge check questions. We are sure that you will gain a new experience and knowledge to increase your competency. If this is your first time with our channel, kindly subscribe and activate the bell to be updated with our news and other courses. Before you start, you should complete Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 that already in our channel. The first 3 parts links at the description. Let's start. In the first 3 parts we learn what is noise, why noise is considered as one of the hazards in our life and workplaces, some important definitions related to noise, sources of noise, and noise pollution and effects on us. Now let's explore the control measures. As per the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, the hierarchy of noise controls are: eliminate the noise source by physically remove the hazard, and this is considered the most effective method of control. Buy quiet equipment and tools, and this in name as replace the hazard. Control the noise hazard by isolate the source or the exposed people. In addition, change the way people work by reduce exposure limits. And finally, with the least effective method is using the personal protective equipment. Let's discuss these control measures in detail in this module. Background. Noise controls are the first line of defense against excessive noise exposure. The use of these controls should aim to reduce the hazardous exposure to the point where the risk to hearing is eliminated or minimized. With the reduction of even a few decibels, the hazard to hearing is reduced, communication is improved, and noise-related annoyance is reduced. There are several ways to control and reduce worker exposure to noise in a workplace. As a threat that affects the health of workers and their level of productivity, including, for example, but not limited to, removing the risk, noise, from its roots, or reducing it to legally permissible levels, or finding engineering solutions to deal with it in the workplace. All in all, the first of these procedures is to identify and analyze the risks in the place, and then start finding solutions for them. The less workers are exposed to noise as a danger from other dangers. For example, the less they complain of stress and nervousness during work, for example. And this is reflected positively on the productivity of workers. And the cost of health care for them is also reduced if a facility is forced to treat them from the effects of exposure to noise in the long term. Eliminating or reducing excessive noise at work is not simply a legal responsibility for employers, it is also in an organization's commercial interests. The safer and healthier the working environment, the lower the probability of costly absenteeism, accidents, and underperformance. Assessing the risks. The degree and type of assessment will depend upon the scope and extent of the problem in the workplace, but all the risks arising from noise should be considered. For example, the ways in which noise may increase the risk of accidents in a factory should be considered along with the risk of noise-induced hearing loss, NIHL. Therefore, those who analyze the risks must be trained on how to implement this in the correct way, and put the recommendations into practice. In addition, noting that the management of the facility must be confident in these procedures, and the importance of occupational safety and health, and that in the end it will be in the interest of the employer. Key points in risk assessment. Identify the different noise-related risks in your organization. Consider who may be harmed, and how, including temporary and part-time staff, as well as workers in specific risk groups such as employees who are pregnant. Evaluate measures that are already in place to control noise levels, and decide what further action needs to be taken. Record all your findings and share them with workers and their representatives. Noise hierarchy of control measures. As we introduced earlier, there is a hierarchy of control measures that can be followed to ensure the health and safety of workers. Elimination of noise sources. In that case, there is no noise hazard. Control of noise at source, engineering controls. These techniques used in a different methods and ways. Collective control measures through work organization and workplace layout, administrative controls. At the final use the personal protective equipment, PPE. Let's explore all these in more details. Eliminate the noise source. The elimination of a source of noise is the most effective way to prevent risks to workers, and should always be considered when new work equipment or workplaces are planned. A no-noise or low-noise procurement policy is usually the most cost-effective way to prevent or control noise. Control of noise at source. The reduction of noise, either at its source or in its path, should be a major focus of noise management programs, considering both equipment and workplace design and maintenance. That reduced sound exposure levels are available and technologically feasible for most noise sources. Engineering controls involve modifying or replacing equipment or making related physical changes at the noise source or along the transmission path to reduce the noise level at the worker's ear. It is possible to purchase equipment or devices that emit a low level of noise. It is also possible to set conditions for the factory for the purchased machines so that these machines emit a specific level of noise through the specifications of the user's requirements. This name User Requirement Specifications or URS, so as not to increase the noise emission from them. Let's explore some engineering controls examples. Isolation of the source, via location, enclosure, or vibration damping using metal or air springs or elastomer supports. Reduction at the source or in the path, using enclosures and barriers. Mufflers or silencers on exhausts, or by reducing cutting, fin, or impact speeds. Replacement or alteration of machines, including belt drives as opposed to noisier gears, or electrical rather than pneumatic tools. As you can see, solutions to reduce noise emission from machinery or equipment are possible, provided that the administration is committed to occupational safety and health. Other engineering controls examples. Application of quieter materials, such as rubber liners and bins, conveyors, and vibrators. Active noise reduction, anti-noise, in certain circumstances. Carrying out preventive maintenance, as parts become worn, noise levels can change. Choose low-noise tools and machinery. The attached pictures gives a clear example of how to isolate the machine's engineering to control the emission of noise through isolation with glass, and the other by installing a zipper at the bottom of the machine to absorb the noise emanating from it. Collective control measures. Where noise cannot be adequately controlled at source, further steps should be taken to reduce the exposure of workers to noise. These can include changing the workplace sound absorption in a room. For example, a sound-absorbing ceiling can have an effect on reducing workers' exposure to noise. Work organization, for example, using working methods that require less exposure to noise. Work equipment, it depends on how work equipment is installed and where it is located, can make a big difference to workers' noise exposure. Amount of time that employee spends at high noise source. In addition, it is also possible to control exposure to noise by reducing the exposure of workers to it by following the shift system, so that the presence of workers in high noise places is regulated for the least possible time during the day. Other collective control measures. The ergonomics of any noise control measure should be considered. When noise control measures create difficulties for workers to carry out their jobs, they may be modified or removed, rendering them ineffective. Warning signs. This is administrative control tools, and will be found with different caution. For example, high noise level, or mandatory signs, ear protection must be worn. Warning signs remind workers of the precautions that must be taken in different places to prevent danger from those working there. Also, this is one of the requirements of the laws related to preserving the safety of workers. Information and training. The employer must provide training for workers so that they can identify risks in their workplaces and provide ways and procedures to easily report them. Also, the employer must find channels through which employees can follow up on the steps that have been implemented or achieved to treat the risks that have been reported. Workers should receive information and training to help them understand and deal with the noise-related risks. This should cover the following: the risks faced, as well as the measures taken to eliminate them, the results of the risk assessment, and any noise measurements, including an explanation of their significance. Noise control and hearing protection measures, including PPE. Why and how to detect and report signs of hearing damage. When workers are entitled to health surveillance, and its purpose. Regularly monitor the risks and control measures. Employers should check regularly that the measures in place to prevent or control noise are still working effectively. Depending on their noise exposure, workers have a right to appropriate health surveillance, where the health records must be kept, and information provided to the employees. The knowledge gained from the surveillance should be used to review the risks and control measures. Follow-up of the health status of the workers gives positive indications of the extent of the employer's concern for the health of the workers, which may increase the improvement in their psychological state. Employee involvement. Consulting the workforce is a legal requirement, and helps to ensure that the workers are committed to safety and health procedures and improvements. Using their knowledge helps to ensure hazards are correctly spotted, and workable solutions implemented. Worker representatives have an important role in this process. Employees must be consulted on health and safety measures before the introduction of new technology or products. Personal protective equipment, PPE. The use of protective equipment/personal safety is the last resort to protect workers from work hazards, in contrast to what some people think is the first safety option for them. Personal protective equipment, PPE, such as earplugs and earmuffs, are used as a last resort after all efforts to eliminate or reduce the source of the noise have been exhausted. Store hearing protection in easy-to-access areas. The most important safety instruction for the PPE is how to wear and use it. Issues to consider when using PPE include making sure the PPE chosen is appropriate for the type and duration of the noise, and it should also be compatible with other protective equipment. Employees should have a choice of suitable hearing protection so they can select the most comfortable solution. Many workers, such as drivers, police officers, pilots, and camera operators, need communication earmuffs or headsets, often with active noise cancellation, ANC, to ensure clear communication and minimize accident risks. The PPE should be correctly stored. Training should be given on why the PPE is necessary, how it should be used, and how to store and maintain it. One of the conditions that must be adhered to when choosing personal protective equipment is that it is comfortable for its user. It is recommended to involve some user or tasks when purchasing them, and even to provide some of them for practical experience in the facility to ensure their suitability for the worker, and the nature of the work assigned to him. Also, practical training must be provided on its correct use and identification of the limits of its protection for the user, how to test it from damage, and how to clean it constantly. Let's discuss one important factor for using the PPE, which is the noise reduction rating or NRR. The current NRR is a single number, NRR 28, 30, etc. NIOSH recommends derating hearing protectors by a factor that corresponds to the available real-world data. Specifically, NIOSH recommends that the labeled NRRs be derated as follows. Earmuffs, subtract 25% from the manufacturer's labeled NRR. Formable earplugs, subtract 50% from the manufacturer's labeled NRR. All other, subtract 70% from the manufacturer's labeled NRR. The American National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health recommends when determining the protection value that the hearing protectors will provide by subtracting a quarter from the noise reduction rate in the case of ear caps. While OSHA subtracting 7 from the noise reduction rate, NRR, and then dividing the result by 2 to get the value that the hearing protectors will provide in decibels. Now let's check your knowledge. Read the questions carefully and write your answer in a separate sheet to check your knowledge at the end of the part. Question 9. The personal protective equipment, PPE, is the first tool in controlling the exposure to noise. 1. Is this statement is true? 2. This statement is false. Question 10. Sound-absorbing materials on the inside is example of engineering controls. Is this statement is true or this statement is false? Question 11. Warning signs is example of 1. Engineering controls. 2. Control at source controls. 3. Elimination controls. 4. Administrative controls. Question 2. Earmuffs, subtract how many % from the manufacturer's labeled NRR? 1. 50%. 2. 75%. 3. 25%. 4. 10%. It's your turn now to check your answers. Question number 9 is false. The personal protective equipment, PPE, is not the first tool in controlling the exposure to noise. It's the last control defense to protect you from hazards. Question 10 is true. Sound aerials on the inside is example of engineering controls. Question 11. Warning signs is example of administrative controls, so the correct answer is number D. Question 12. Earmuffs, subtract 25% from the manufacturer's labeled NRR. The correct answer is number C. Congratulations, your course part 4 is completed. Complete the course by access to our site, and pass the exam, then you will get your certificate automatically. This is a 100% completely free safety course in our website. Do not forget, if this is your first channel, kindly subscribe and activate the bell to be updated with our information, news and courses. Thank you.